quick demo of how to install and set up and use the features of Penglin as of right now. So I'm going to loosely follow this install guide that we have on the docs page at docs.fossorial.io, but this can get updated in the future, so please always refer back to the written docs before installing anything. So the prerequisites for my installation are I already have a VPS running in the cloud. This is just a Ubuntu server. It has a public IP address with ports 80 and 443 exposed, and then I do have a domain. My domain that I'll be using in this tutorial is fossrl.io, and I've already pre-set up the DNS records to work with Penglin. So you need to point, you need an A record pointing the domain that you plan to host Penglin under, and potentially a wildcard for all subdomains that you want to use for Penglin. So here I'm going to host the dashboard at Proxy. .fossrl.io, and then all subdomains attached to that as well. So to get started, I'm going to first run this installer wget command for my system. So on this VPS, this is an AMD 64 machine, so I'm going to use that release, download it, and then I can just go ahead and run the installer. You have to use this under super user because it's going to ask you if you want to install and run the Docker containers. So you need sudo for that. The first question it's going to ask is the domain name. So I'm going to host this under proxy.fossrl.io. Again, if you can change this if you want to run Penglin just at the root domain. You can do that. Just change that here. Then it's going to ask for my email for Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt is what we are using for automatically generating and renewing our SSL certificates for HTTPS. So this is the root user that I'm going to use to log into Penglin once it's running. I can always change this later, so this is not a big commitment. And then my password, I'm going to use a simple password. And then these are optional security settings. So do I want to disable invites? This asks if you, basically users can sign up without you explicitly inviting them. For self-hosted, it's probably advisable to keep sign-ups off, so set this to yes. I would like users to be able to create new organizations. The admin will always be able to create new organizations even if if it's disabled. And I'm not going to configure email now. If I had an SMTP server set up with Gmail or something else, I could go through the steps to do that here. And then if I select yes, it's going to install Docker to the VPS, and then also pull down the containers and run the stack with Docker Compose. So I'm going to select yes. So I already had Docker installed on this VPS, but if you didn't, there would be an additional step there to make sure it's installed before it started pulling the containers. And I also want to note, if you don't want to use the installer and you want to set up the Docker Compose file and all of its config manually, you can do so. Please refer to our documentation, as well as look at the repo for how we set up the installer. There's some templated Docker Compose files and other config files in there as of now. So right now it's starting up the containers. It looks like they all started correctly. So what we can do is we can also tail the logs right now just to make sure everything's started up, and it looks like it has. And if you're running this for the first time, like I am here, it's going to create a folder in config called Let's Encrypt. So if we go into config, you can see Let's Encrypt, and then in Let's Encrypt, there is an ACME file, and this has all of your newly created SSL certificate for the Penglin dashboard, but you don't have to generally reference that file unless you want to. So now I should be able to go to proxy.fossrl.io, and I can access my dashboard. and I can log in with that root user that I created, and then password 123, exclamation point, log in. So now it's going to ask me to create my first organization. The organization is the largest level of I guess, organization in the system. It contains the sites and the resources, and you can have more than one organization per Penglin instance. So I'm going to call this Demo Lab, and then click Create. And then it's going to ask me to create my first site. I can skip this for now, but I'm going to go ahead and create the site. So I'll call this Laptop, and I'm going to use Newt. So to learn how to install Newt, you can click that link, and it will take you to the docs. But you can also just copy, you can copy the command from the docs and then run that on your system. So I'm going to make sure I have this command copied and saved, because I can only see this once. This contains authentication information, so don't share this with anyone. I have copied the config, so I'm going to click Create Site, and there we go. It's created. Under Sites, I can see it, but it is offline right now. So the next thing I can do is I can go back to the Newt install and copy the install command from my system, and then on any device on your private network, so I'm just going to use my laptop right now, you can install Newt. So I'm going to do that using the command, and then I can execute it using that command I copied when I created the site that has the private info in it. So I'm going to run this, and I don't need to use sudo because this all runs in user space, which is nice. So I'm going to start this, and you can see it connects to the Penglin server quickly and correctly. Let's go back to the dashboard. And in a moment here, if I refresh this, the site will come online. You do have to refresh this currently. It is not dynamically updated. That's a feature soon to come. So the next thing I'm going to do is create a resource, and I'm going to proxy just a simple Python web server I'm running on my computer. So I'm going to run that server now on port 3003. And if I go to localhost 3003, you can see it's just a very simple directory listing. So what I'm going to do is create a resource, and I'm going to call this demo, and it's going to be at demo.fosrl.io. I'm going to use my laptop site that I created and is online. And then it's going to ask me for basically the port and the IP of the internal resource. So because Newt is running on my laptop and I'm also running the Python web server on my laptop, I can use localhost here, and I can also use the port, add the target, and save it. I do want SSL on because I want a signed certificate for this, so it's HTTPS. So now what I should be able to do is go to this site, and you'll notice that when you're using the default settings from the install script, it doesn't use wildcard certificates, so it might take a minute to generate a certificate for you. Eventually it will. It doesn't take long. As you can see, it just worked. So now I'm accessing this at https://demo.fosrl.io, and I do have a signed certificate from Let's Encrypt, which is fantastic. So the next thing we can check out here is authentication. So by default, the resource has platform SSO on. If I open this up in a incognito tab and I go to demo.fosrl.io, you'll notice that I have to log in as my user account because I have platform SSO on, but I can turn this off, which would allow anyone to access the resource. So there's no auth on it now, which is fantastic. The next thing is I can add multiple different authentication methods. I can add a PIN code, and then if I reload this, I have the option to enter a PIN code, and I can have more than one on at a time. As you can see here, I have more than one tab open here. And if I have multiple users and roles, I can configure who can access those if platform SSO is enabled. Also, if I had email configured, I would have more authentication methods related to email one-time passcodes. So the next thing I want to demo is creating another resource to another computer on my private network. So I have Bitwarden running on another server on my network under 192.168.210, and even though Newt is running on my laptop, I can still proxy to that Bitwarden instance. So I'm going to create this resource called Bitwarden and make it Bitwarden as the subdomain. Use my laptop as the entry node, and then put in the IP of the server on my network, and the port for Bitwarden is 8086. Let's save that. And I'm going to disable authentication on this because Bitwarden already has authentication that I want to use. So now I should be able to visit this. Again, wait for the certificate. Let's just refresh. There we go. And boom, it works. So this is really cool because now I can create a proxy to anything on my network while having Newt run on just one instance of a machine on my network. So the other few things to look at here are we can create and invite new users to our org, and we can assign them different roles. You can create as many roles as you would like. And then we can also create temporary or unlimited shareable links. So I'm going to quickly create a link here to Bitwarden and just call this demo and make this for, let's do just a 1-day demo. I can also make it never expire, so I'll create the link and then I can copy the code, and now I can share this with anyone. And if Bitwarden had authentication enabled, this link would bypass that and grant temporary access for 1 day to that resource until it expires. So if I go back to my incognito window here and I access it, you see I can go to Bitwarden just fine. So that is all for now. Right now, Penglin is in beta, so please continuously refer to the docs for updates, as it will probably change a lot as we release new versions and features, and refer to GitHub for change logs and other commit information. So yeah, thank you, and please contact support. You can use this email or support@fossorial.io if you have any specific questions.